Hi everyone, welcome to the Real Estate Tax Tips channel. My name is Cherry Chan, a chartered professional accountant located in Oakville, Ontario, Canada. And I'm on a mission to become the Google map for hardworking Canadians seeking financial freedom. And today I have a special guest, Elizabeth Kelly, here with me. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much for having me back, Cherry. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, well, tell us a little bit about you, for those of you who have not met Elizabeth before.
I've been a real estate investor for about 20 years now. My husband and I built a portfolio of properties in a couple of communities in Canada, and I opened my own property management company. I was an active property manager for 15 years. I was a trainer for Rich Dad for 8 years, and then I became a real estate coach. And for the last 5 years, I've been dedicated to helping Canadians find their financial freedom as well, which is why you're my favorite accountant, Cherry.
Thank you, thank you. So there's a lot of headlines these days with the real estate world, and I feel obligated to at least talk about it, right? Over the last couple of months, all about people borrowing from promissory notes, and these are the investors that are borrowing or setting up deals for promissory notes and unable to repay them. And now OSC, so Ontario Security Commission, has to step in and essentially force these people to go into bankruptcy.
Yeah. So a couple of weeks ago, I wanted to do a rough tally because you and I both know that this started with the Saskatchewan company, and was it 2021?
Yeah, Epic Alliance.
Epic Alliance. So I did a rough tally based on what I've seen in the news. There's a mortgage broker in BC. I think he was 300 and some million, Greg Martel, and then he's, last I heard, he's hiding in Dubai. So there's a whole bunch of like mystery but when I totaled up what I knew was missing or unavailable for Canadian real estate investors in the last couple of years, I'm at $1 billion.
Oh my God, really?
$1 billion in money that was invested with people who Canadians believed that they could trust, that they were people who are honorable and reputable, and that they would take care of their money the way that they would take care of their own money. And the sad thing is, a lot of these people unfortunately may not get their money back, and that is heartbreaking. And we've already seen some people who have been put in financial situations that are absolutely, they've unfortunately made some decisions that have not even given them the time to be able to see if something can be salvaged. And when we do that to other people, I think there's a tremendous responsibility that comes with OPM and raising capital and putting a deal forward to people. And I'm not just talking about people who have taken courses and are, quote unquote educated. I'm talking about when you pitch real estate deals to other people, you need to understand the tremendous responsibility that comes with that. And the flip side is, when you're lending your money, you have to understand that there is a possibility that you will not get it back, and you should not be lending your last dollar.
So I think it's a great point, but I want to step back a little bit. I want to be able to explain to our viewer what has gone wrong. Now, there are multiple scenarios, obviously.
Yes.
I think the easiest is to start with essentially buying a product, buying essentially a house. And you get approached, and they put a deal together. These people who are in the news that are being prosecuted, they put the deal together and they claim that this property is in great shape, or in whatever shape it is, in a great location. It could be claimed, people claim that you could rent it for this much money, and your money I'll give you like whatever percentage for your money. And they are just unable to complete the product or rent it for the promised rent, and therefore there is no money coming back. That's one example.
Yes. So the riskiest example, I sort of see that as mid-level. So you're talking about private lending, the true definition of private lending, meaning that you're holding a mortgage. So you're putting a $100,000 mortgage on a property, and 100% the risk, or one of the sources of risk from that, is not making sure, not doing your due diligence to make sure that that property is actually worth the money that they're saying it is. And that was one of the big challenges with the recent situation that involved a realtor and some of the other companies. Was they were claiming properties were worth X amount, or they were buying properties for X amount, but they weren't taking care of them. And then the properties were being remortgaged or refinanced, and nobody was doing the due diligence to make sure that, hey, is this evaluation of this property actually accurate? And we saw the same thing in the Epic Alliance thing, where there were, realtors who were involved, or there were appraisers who were involved, and it was all sort of a collaboration, and everybody was kind of working together. And it might have been unintentional. Like, it might not have been that somebody set out to say, well, I know the property is worth 100, but I'm going to say it's worth 200 to get more money. It could have just been a whole bunch of circumstances. But as the lender, again, it's my responsibility to make sure that the asset that I'm lending on is actually worth the money that is being claimed it is. And especially when you have a situation where properties, are being refinanced without actually being sold, then you have to make sure, like, order your own appraisal. It's $400. It is so worth it to invest $400,000 at the beginning instead of losing $400,000 at the back end. And it won't stop it from happening in every situation, but when I look at all of these different cases and what's happened, there's 3 or 4 main issues that I see where if people had done a little more due diligence, perhaps there would have been a little less risk associated with this investment. The other one where I see the biggest risk always is promissory notes, because they're literally, it's a piece of paper. Like, Cherry, I love you, I think you're amazing, I'm not going to lend you money with just a piece of paper, because a million things happen that you never intended, you never foresaw. You have the best of intentions, you have a ton of integrity, let alone lending money to someone who might not have the same level of integrity that you do.
So this is a good time to talk about all these promissory note deal. I think I talked a little bit about that in the past, but the promissory note deal could happen as simple as this. You have a property, let's say it's fully paid off. Majority of the time, they're not fully paid off, okay? So you have this property, and the owner of the property are saying, okay, so I need some money for renovation, whatever reason, for renovation. It's just short term, so let's just save the hassle. I don't want to put anything else on the property because it's also going to affect my future ability to borrow additional refinance money. So I'm going to get a promissory note. So I'll go to Elizabeth Kelly. Let's say I'm the person that owns it. I'll say, hey, like, I offer you 10%, 12%. So 12% and 14%, sometimes it's as high as 16%. I've heard. And I'll say, hey, Elizabeth Kelly, I'm giving you so much return, and therefore I just do not want anything to be registered against that property. I'll sign the agreement, I'll give you 16% annualized return, and in exchange, you just lend me the $100,000 that I want. And so what these con artists does is that they take the same property and they go to another person and say the same thing. And these people, because the return is high, anywhere between 8%, 10% to 16%.
I've seen 20.
Wow, 20%. Well, when you are getting 20%, your spider sense should go up immediately. Why are you getting 20%? There is something that's behind the scene, right? So I, as the investor, not that I've ever done that, I don't ever do that, I would approach another investor, private lender, too, and say, hey, give me this and I'll give you 16% or 20% or whatever. And then the third person. So we end up, all these promissory note lender, could be tens of them or hundreds of them, they're all lending on the same project, but there is essentially no equity left. And you have no recollection if I choose not to return the money. And it sounds like there's that going on too.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. There's also, people buying at 100% loan to value with other people's money, and then they're borrowing the renovation money on top of that. So they've got no money in the deal, and they've just borrowed money, and it's just putting people in situations like, financially, it's not a viable
business
investment model. it's not a sustainable investment model, and it is very, very easy to go from other people's money, OPM, 100% loan to value, 100% renovation cost, it's very easy to slide from that into the Ponzi scheme, which is where in order to make the monthly payments, the person that you're lending to now has to go borrow from somebody else to make the monthly interest payments because the renovation project hasn't finished, there's no money coming in, there's no way to pay you. So they go borrow a little bit more money, anticipating that the project is actually going to be worth more than their initial projection at the end. The problem we've seen is that in the last couple of years, of course, the market has not been what it was in 2020. So all these people are getting caught in these deals and these projects where things are actually worth less than they were potentially even before they bought them.
Yeah, it's a very sad situation. And honestly, I think a lot of it has to do with the return on investment and how easy it is to do private lending or to do promissory notes, because I've worked with clients who borrow from their home equity line of credit. So at the time, I think the HELOC interest was like 3-4%, and then turn around and land it on promissory note, and they're getting like 10% plus. So then they are making a spread. But what they fail to understand is that making that 10% plus means that the higher the return, the higher the risk.
Yes.
People don't recognize that. They don't put the two and two together. And they just look at the return on investment and how easy it is to make that passive cash flow. I can tell you, I work extremely, extremely hard to make the return on investment, at least on my business, from my business alone. So did you have any particular students or coaches that you work with that was exposed to any of these deals? Or thankfully none, because they were working with you.
So I have had some clients who were caught. So in 2022, I started to hear some whispers. So a couple of the projects that were involved in the big catastrophic one with the mortgage broker and the realtor and the other groups, a couple of those properties that were purchased were ours. And we ran our property management company. We wanted to keep the management. So I was calling and I was kind of saying like, hey, what's going on? We'd love to be able to keep the business. Can we work together? We were told, nope, we have our own property management company. Okay, thank you. No problem.
Oh, so you sold them the property?
We sold them a couple of properties. So I know that what they bought the properties from us in 2022, I want to say. I know what they bought the properties for. They were fair prices. They were fair market prices. Absolutely. They were not overpaid. They were not overinflated. But what I saw happening from my end was it took like 90 days or 120 days after the closing for them to collect the keys. So that means they have no access to the properties. And then we have tenants who are calling who are saying, we know we don't pay you rent anymore, but we have no idea where to pay our rent. And then we have tenants calling, 60, 90 days later going, nobody's come to clear the snow. We can't get our cars out of the parking lot anymore. Like somebody needs to do something. Where do we call? Who do we call? And I'm sorry, I don't know. So when I start to see stuff like that, even if something is worth $500,000 the day you buy it, if you don't take care of it, the value begins to drop. The tenants know you don't care. There's opportunities for, not great things to happen, people to move in who aren't the greatest, like higher vacancy rates, decreasing condition, all these things. So even if the day you took possession of the property, it was worth X, by now it's worth, 10, 15, 20% lower. So I started to see some of those signs in 2022 that made me nervous. And then I had a couple of clients who had loans out with some of the different borrowers. And I started to see that the borrower was this entity, but the person or the entity paying the mortgage was different. And I'm like, that should not be paying for that. There's no way, like if you truly lent the money to this organization, this person, this company, this person over here should not be making the mortgage payments. So I went back to my client and I said, pull everything. There's something going on here that I don't like. And she was able to get all of her money out and she did really well.
Awesome.
And then I mentioned it to another one of my clients and I said, I don't like it and I'm uncomfortable with it. And he said, I'm getting 18%. He's like, I really like the money. I'm like, I understand, but can you afford to lose all that money? And he said, no. and he pulled everything out.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's awesome. And then I didn't hear from him again until earlier this year.
When the news came out?
When the news came, well, the news hadn't even come out. He had messaged me first and said, do you have some time? I need to talk to you. And I talked to him and my heart broke for him. And he said, I needed that money. I needed that cash flow, and I gave it back to them.
Oh.
And it's all gone. And I went, oh my gosh, like, you were out, you were free, you were clear. And he said, yeah, but I was making such good money. And I know that this is one of the fundamental things in real estate, and it's a great thing, but it's also a horrible thing, and it's this FOMO that we feel, this fear of missing out on this opportunity, this deal, this return, this blah, blah, blah. And you know, as someone who has a rich dad background and who sat in a room where, you know, I was sold to for the concept of education, I understand what it feels like, and I understand to be on the receiving end of it. But I think we have to remember, we always have to take a step back and say, if I lost everything, can I afford to? So if I put $100,000 into a deal, can I afford to lose that? Because you have to know that the world is not always a rosy place, as much as we would like it to be, and we can do our due diligence to minimize risk as much as possible. The reality is there is nothing out there that is absolutely no risk.
Absolutely, 100%. I just thought that it's interesting for this particular client. He went back in and now he lost the money. And I've worked with clients who also lost money to different people, and a lot of them are prominent people and in the industry. And it doesn't matter what your name is, you still should do your own due diligence. I would only, if I were doing private lending, I don't do private lending. If I were to do private lending, I would look at the property. I wouldn't just do, or I would invest in a fund that actually do the due diligence. They make some cut from our money, but at least someone else is doing their own due diligence. I would never do it essentially without doing the due diligence.
And again, as someone from sort of the big education company background, I honestly feel like we're doing a disservice to people. Like, people have paid us, and I say this like I'm not affiliated with a big education company right now, but I have had a lot of conversations with a lot of people that, you know, they paid to be educated. And I listen to what's been taught and I'm like, this is not enough. We need to do better. We need to give people the information that they need in order to make good decisions. Like, we're teaching them the bare minimum. We're teaching them the basics. We should be teaching people how to protect their money, how to grow their money, not just how to invest it in someone with very little due diligence. And I really hope that people are listening and going, I require more from my education company or from my educator, from my coach, from my mentor than the bare minimum.
I think one thing people often forget is that these are education company, right? They're not real estate investor necessarily. They're education money. Educational company. So they're not necessarily there to. Their money is made on selling the educational program. Their money is not on you being successful as a real estate investor. I think that's very important. Now going back to you in particular. So what are you doing these days? Because people are losing money on the real estate front. And a lot of our clients are playing defense.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time they're just like, I don't know how long I would be able to last. And I would be able to carry the mortgage for like maybe 6 months before the property is going to go up in value, and then I can sell.
Yeah.
So a lot of that rambling is going on among my clients as well. So what's happening with your membership? What's happening with your clientele, your coachees?
I love that you asked that. I've spent the better part of the last 2 years working with people who are struggling, whether their portfolio's upside down, whether their money is gone and they're having to take legal action, trying to figure out the best way forward. What I have come to in the last 2 years is I want to encourage people to take back control of their cash flow. I want to encourage people, stop looking for these passive investments, for these opportunities to, I'm going to lend my money to so-and-so and then every month I'm going to get a check. Forget that. That is not the way that I would recommend you go right now. I think it's really important that you focus on taking control of your cash flow. And that's why I've decided to, this fall, I am launching a new division of my coaching company, and it's going to be creating a side hustle. Creating a business that is going to bring you the cash flow, and it can be real estate adjacent. I have clients, I've been testing it with some of my existing clients, but it might be a cleaning company, it might be a property management company, it might be a rent-to-own company, but it is some way that you have control over your money and what happens to it, and you are not having to do due diligence and trusting someone else to steward your money the way you would like it to be stewarded.
Well, that's very exciting. Is there, I know that you're also hosting an event.
Yes. An extension of that is this year. This will be the 3rd annual Real Estate Resilience Summit. My co-hosts this year are Megan Hubner and Victoria Clooney, and we are 100% focused and in alignment that this year's summit is going to be focused on the business of real estate. And not just real estate here in Canada, because we know it's been challenging to find cash flow and to buy apartment buildings. So we've opened it up. We have some speakers coming in from the US. We're going to be talking a little bit about what it's like to invest in the US. We're going to be talking about businesses, how to start a business, how to buy a business. And this is the opportunity to really increase your focus, increase your awareness, and get the information you need to be able to take action. And Cherry, we are so excited to have you as a speaker for us again this year.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Buying a business is a very passionate topic that I have.
Yeah.
I'm always looking to put together an event. I'm always looking for opportunity to talk about it. It doesn't make me any money. It doesn't necessarily generate any leads for me, but it's a topic that I'm very, very passionate about. I think not a lot of people are into buying a business per se and are scared of the process. But if you have real estate background, the purchase and the evaluation of the business is super similar to buying, say, an apartment building.
I agree. And the other thing that I really like with the idea of a business is you can incorporate the real estate. So you don't just buy a coin laundry, you don't just buy a car wash, you buy the real estate that it's on. Yep. So that you have an income generating asset that is backed by a hard asset. And that's, when I look at all of my investments that came through COVID and that have done really well, it's my commercial building that I run as a short-term rental. It's the one that I've had the most control over. It's given me the best financial return and satisfaction. It's also given me the opportunity to continue to employ people, to be a service provider, and to continue to support the local community.
Yeah, I think what people miss is that when you are trying to, say, build a real estate portfolio, what I've seen that's being the biggest failure is people don't understand cash flow. Real estate doesn't generally have cash flow, at least from my experience. I haven't seen a lot of cash flow from the real estate business, and you always have to find a cash flow generating business or some sort of model that would provide you that constant cash flow. Living off your mortgage is, to me, to me, it is hard for me to understand. So you always, the people who are really successful and continue to be successful are the ones that had it figured out. Like they even have the flipping company on the side. They may be a realtor on the side. They might have their coaching business on the side that support their money, essentially their day-to-day lifestyle. Or provide more than just the lifestyle basis, but also trying to find additional money for you to invest back into the real estate. And having that additional source of income, side hustle, like you mentioned, tremendous, because it's hard to live off your own income, your job income these days, let alone save enough money to invest in real estate.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest myths that is sort of put out there is the idea that the buy, rent, and hold strategy, you know, whether you're buying single family homes, duplexes, apartment buildings, that it produces tremendous cash flow. And even when we started buying in 2005, if you're doing what we're told to do, which is, you know, refinance every 5 years, pull your capital back out and reinvest, you're not typically generating cash flow, and you certainly aren't at the prices we're paying right now for multi-unit buildings in most places. So that's one of those ideas that when you say, okay, maybe that's not the correct information, maybe there's a better way to do this, that you start to realize that there are some other options. If we kind of let go of that, you know, fear of missing out and, you know, I want to do what everybody else is doing, if we stop listening to that, there are definitely better options out there.
Yeah, well, that is so true. A few years ago, I got the opportunity to get into joint venture or essentially choose whether we want to go into joint venture or not. And I felt too much of a sense of responsibility. And I felt like, okay, if I lose people's money, I would not feel good. So I'd rather stay in my own lane. Yes, my portfolio will only be small, but I'm okay with it because I don't want to risk other people's money and be able, like, feel bad and actually come up with the money to repay the joint venture partner. And that's not how I want to, that's not how the business model works, and that's why I don't want to get into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a really great point of due diligence. If you are looking at investing with someone and they have none of their own money in the deal, think twice. Don't. Always look for people to have some of their own money in the deal, because then if it goes sideways, their money should be what protects you more than anything else, hopefully. If you have someone who's coming to you for a deal, they're looking at 100% loan to value, they've got none of their own money in, they're borrowing money for, you know, the reserve fund and the renovations and all those other things, that's going to be super high risk. I recommend at the very least, if you continue with private lending, which it can be done safely, but if you continue, make sure that everybody has their own money in the deal.
Now, so back to your event. So what can people learn? Where can they find more information about the event, and what can they expect to learn from the event?
Oh, that's actually a great question. So it's September 28th and 29th. It is 100% virtual. So that means that you show up, you bring your coffee in the morning, you maybe have your wine in the evening, come in your pajamas, and just spend 2 days with us, 28th and 29th, learning about real estate, learning about businesses, learning about creating cash flow and taking control over your financial freedom. Everything is recorded. You will have access to the recordings. If you become a VIP member, you have lifetime access. A VIP ticket is like $297 for an entire weekend of learning, lifetime access, plus Victoria, Megan, and I are throwing in 3 accountability sessions afterwards, because we talked about what happens after events. And most people, my husband calls it a 3-shower event. By the time you've had 3 showers, you've forgotten everything you learned. So we wanted to make it so that there is an accountability session for the next 3 months afterwards to continue the networking, to continue the connecting and the growing, because we want people to take information that our amazing speakers like you are sharing about how to build wealth and actually applying it. And it's not just a listen and then move on.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So how do they find out more about your event?
realestateresilience.ca is the website, and tickets are available between now and September 28th.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Thank you for having me, and I hope you'll come and join us. We are so excited to share everything that we have learned from, we're at over 50 years in the real estate world among the 3 hosts, plus all of our fantastic speakers, including Erwin as well, talking about a little bit of Canadian and US investing.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.